Hello, family. Welcome back. Dr. Anta here again to introduce another episode in the Poverty Inherited Illusion or Reality series. This second episode will focus on poverty and pediatrics. Stay tuned. Poverty has no specific age group. According to the World Poverty Clock, over 600 million persons globally live in extreme poverty, of which over 330 million are between the age of 0 to 19. Children who live in poverty experience more vulnerable effects than adults. Children who inherit or born into poverty are more likely to experience poorer health problems and outcomes, including poor nutrition, low birth weight, chronic disease, mental health issues, and general relationship issues.
Poverty is when you do not have enough money to meet your basic needs like food, clothes, and shelter.
Poverty is when people aren't in a good financial situation.
Poverty is when people live on the streets.
No, I don't think I'm poor because my parents can provide for me and afford my basic needs food, clothes, and shelter.
No.
No.
My solution is to work hard and to be positive.
Poverty can be solved if some agencies do help people in poverty to give them the encouragement or to help them find jobs to get out of poverty.
Yes, I think there is also a solution where poverty can be solved and how is that, the organization help them, give money where they can start off, building themselves up and, getting them new clothes and food where they can survive. And also, give them, beds or, if they have, sicknesses, they can help them with the, medical stuff. And then they can, try to get themselves jobs and then save up the money.
Pediatricians have anecdotally reported increased incidence of health issues, namely respiratory issues, obesity, and crime among children living in deprived areas. Unfortunately, the issues of child poverty are wide-ranging. Thus, a child's future dreams and aspirations, academics, mental health, and ability to form healthy relationships could be affected. In this episode, we will address poverty and pediatrics. From India, we have a medical doctor who is now an intensivist with pediatric experience, and a registered nurse from the Philippines with pediatric expertise. They both will further expound on the topic. What is the definition of child poverty? And do you think there is an increase? Why would that be so?
Good day. I have been a professional nurse for more than 30 years that is presently assigned at a private clinic. Based on my own understanding, child poverty is when a child is directly born into a state of poverty. I believe that there has been a notable increase that was both caused by the pandemic and generational poverty.
Good day to everyone. This is Dr. Balakrishnan, working as an intensive care physician in India. Child poverty is the lack of basic needs like food, clothing, sanitation, shelter, healthcare, and education, which are essential to their survival. Even though most governments have taken steps to improve the living conditions for children, I believe in some countries child poverty might be increasing. In my opinion, unstable governments, countries that are constantly involved in conflicts, wars, and in countries where there is extreme famine, drought, poor health care, and social status are more likely the reasons for worsening child poverty. Thank you.
Is there a correlation between poverty and a child's health?
I believe yes. Many families that are in a state of poverty will wait until it is needed to bring their child to a hospital because they cannot afford it. They also prefer traditional medicine rather than the modern one.
I believe there's a strong correlation. Poverty affects both physical and mental well being of their children. Kids can become malnourished and can die from starvation. As these children grow into adults in poor socioeconomic circumstances, they are vulnerable for cardiovascular, respiratory, and other diseases, which sets up for a vicious cycle.
How can poverty affect a child's growth and development?
Family's financial status directly impacts the growth and development of a child. If a family is in a state of poverty, they cannot afford to give them a proper education or give them the means to be educated. Additionally, if a family is in a state of poverty, food will be scarce and a proper diet needed for a child cannot be maintained.
It can reduce life expectancy of the children. Poverty can prevent kids from learning and educational opportunities. They can be exploited to chronic diseases like tuberculosis. They are more likely to be exposed to toxins like environmental pollutants. They have a very high chance of becoming drug addicts and alcoholics at a very young age.
What are the most common chronic diseases you have observed in poor children?
I believe that most poor children that I have observed have are malnutrition and have scabies.
Malaria, tuberculosis, diarrheal diseases. In the long term, they can have chronic cardiovascular and respiratory diseases.
Would it be correct to say treatments are more accessible for all socioeconomic levels in developed countries than developing countries? Can you please elaborate?
I believe yes. Developed countries like Canada offer free healthcare to their citizens. However, in some developed countries, especially America, healthcare is considered a business, making it inaccessible to all socioeconomic levels despite it being a developed country.
In my opinion, it's more likely that the treatments are more accessible in developed world than the developing world. In most of the developed world, there is a robust healthcare infrastructure which provide treatment to most of the common illnesses. And to add, there are extraordinary tertiary care referral centers that deals with rare disorders irrespective of socioeconomic status. The same cannot be said of the developing or the underdeveloped world. In developed countries, there are government institutions like the primary healthcare and teaching hospitals. And in countries like India, where private healthcare plays a major role, cater the needs of the poor, middle class, and the rich. So it's essentially treatment options are based upon individual economic status. In developing countries like India, it's almost impossible for middle class or the rich to visit a government hospitals for various reasons, and generally they would prefer to go to private sector to get treated.
Please list a few daily practical economic changes that could reduce children's poverty.
I believe that implementing a government project that allows those in a state of poverty to let their children stay in a center to be educated and fed will be a great step to reduce children's poverty. The guardians will be able to find jobs while their children is safe and well fed.
To name a few, better wages and incentives for poor working parents could be established, as it would help kids to avoid child labor. It would help them to get good food, sanitation, clean water, and good education. In countries like India, the government should continue to provide midday meal schemes so that children can attend schools regularly and learn new things. a good public distribution system, free travel passes for students in public transport, free education, free healthcare, and a good infrastructure will also help in reducing child poverty. And finally, involvement of non-governmental organizations to help the children in need would be of immense help, as government alone cannot be in a position to do everything for their citizens.
In your parting words, please give us your opinion on the topic for the Poverty, Inherited, Illusion, or Reality series.
Poverty is generational. The rich get richer while the poor get poorer. How can the poor ever stop being poor when the rich take from them?
I believe poverty is indeed real. It is also inherited and to a certain extent has an illusion to it. Its illusion to a certain extent, as poverty in developed world is different from the developing world, as it's an absolute poverty in the developing world. That is lack of basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, healthcare and education. I also believe poverty is inherited, as most of the poor continues to be poor, even though at times with the help of government or NGO they come out of poverty line, it might not sustain. Many factors might be responsible for this, like lack of motivation at home to improve oneself, welfare schemes initiated by government not necessarily reaching the needy, and disparity in the society. And finally, poverty is real, as despite most governments take necessary steps to improve the standard of living of its citizen, poverty continues to be on the rise, at least in the developing countries. It might be due to poor wages, rising cost of living, continued caste and gender discrimination, and also continued disparity in geographical development.
For me, I think poverty is a very subjective term, but generally is when you cannot guarantee the basic human rights and needs in a day-to-day basis.
In my opinion, poverty is living below.
The definition of poverty can be relative depending on the context and the environment, but also from which point of view you look at it. In a standard way, poverty could be described as follows: when a person or a community does not have the means, as means I mean financial or others, to adequately meet their basic needs such as food, clothing and housing.
I do not consider myself poor.
Be poor?
I don't think so.
No, financially and materially not.
I think there is a solution from poverty, and I think the key answer is education. This answer is from Alba Juvenribes, and I'm from Spain.
I think the solution is to get those people out of that mindset of living poor life. It's not. It's just living. It's just their lifestyle that brought them to that. But I found that through my work, I found that some people actually choose to be poor. They like living free of other people. So I think it mainly depends on the person who you say is poor. It's up to them whether they want to stay poor or they want to stay. But yeah, in my opinion, I think it's just your mindset.
The mutual aid and sharing between human beings, regardless of the financial aspect, and also the development of sustainable, self-sufficient and permanent solution, like sustainability. Voila, that's it. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Family, you have heard it. The pediatric perspective from a medical doctor who is also an intensivist and a nurse from the Philippines with pediatric experience. Globally, there has been remarkable strides in development, yet extreme poverty still exists, of which children are disproportionately affected. According to the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, current report, children comprise 1/3 of the global population and represent half of those struggling to survive on less than $1.90 US per day. Across the world, approximately 1 billion children are multidimensionally poor. What does that mean? They lack necessities as basic as nutrition or clean water. Due to our last pandemic, COVID-19, an additional 100 million children are plunged into poverty. Family, you may be wondering, what can I do about this? Let's create practical ways to assist these kids in need and change the trajectory of their lives. There are several global practical methods of reducing poverty in children. 1. Poverty inherited could develop into a cycle. Hence, breaking this cycle of poverty in families required a pragmatic approach integrating a root cause solution. The family's income would demand adjustments. These adjustments involve an increased salary, which could require professional development, back to school, or improved work ethics, hence job promotion, resulting increased salary. 2. Advocate for more family sessions incorporating communication, bonding, and developmental skills, which would adjust, cultivate, and maintain healthier moral compasses. 3. Encourage family projects that will substitute a percentage of income. For example, community gardening, be it in flower pots or in a section of the park. Troubleshoot for possibilities of family or community entrepreneurship. The list could go on with your creativity on this subject matter. On the other side, for individuals who can afford it and the affluent, UNICEF is an international organization that would benefit from your donation to reduce global children's poverty. Visit UNICEF via their website, email, or a location near you for further details. Another simple way to assist a child in need would be through direct or indirect encounters. An example of a direct encounter would be assisting with financial, grocery, or clothing for a child in need, or indirect assistance through school feeding programs, projects, or community shelters for less fortunate families. You are now challenged to consider and act accordingly towards these avenues of service. Stay tuned for the next episode from another perspective. Remember, let us become ambassadors of positive, healthy changes. Together, we soar and succeed. The time is now. Bless. Bendiga.